Living in Japan can sound like a dream. Beautiful scenery, rich culture, and amazing food. But there's a lot that people don't talk about when it comes to life here, especially as a foreigner. So, after 10 years of living in Japan, people often ask me, what's the hardest part of adjusting to life here? Sure, learning the language is tough, but it's more than that. Today I'm going to share 3 challenges I faced. Let's start with one of the most frustrating challenges, finding a job. If you don't have Japanese fluency or a specialized visa, you might feel like doors are constantly closing on you. When I first finished Japanese language school, I was eager to find a job and start my career here. But getting that first job offer wasn't easy at all. While international companies are a bit more flexible when it comes to hiring foreigners, traditional Japanese companies can be a completely different story. They still prioritize Japanese language skills and cultural fit. You've probably heard this, but it's not just the language that's the hurdle. The visa process can also feel like a maze. Without a company sponsoring your work visa, you can't legally work. That can lead to a vicious cycle. You need a visa to work, but you need a job to get the visa. Even after getting hired, there are cultural nuances that make working in a traditional Japanese company difficult. The hierarchy, the communication style, and even the way meetings are conducted can be overwhelming at first. There is a lot of indirect communication, which took me a long time to adapt to. More on that in another video. Japan is an incredibly beautiful country with rich traditions and culture. But as a foreigner, I did notice something that I wasn't fully prepared for: the lack of cultural diversity. Now, let's be clear. Japan is Japan, one of the most homogeneous societies in the world. While living here, I quickly realized that the concept of multiculturalism doesn't really exist in the same way it does in places like the US or Europe. Sometimes this can make you feel a bit isolated, especially if you come from a diverse environment. For example, one of the first things that hit me was the idea of fitting in versus standing out. In Japan, blending in with the group is highly valued, which can be a bit tricky when you're visibly different. Whether it's in social settings or even at work, the expectation to conform can feel stifling at times. This lack of diversity isn't just about ethnicity, it extends to things like lifestyle and even thinking patterns. I found it hard to relate to certain viewpoints at work because there's often a "this is how things have always been done" mentality. If you're a creative thinker or someone who likes to challenge norms, it might take you a while to find your place. Now, here's something that might shock you. Salaries in Japan often don't keep up with inflation. When I first started working, I assumed that over time, my salary would increase as my experience and skills grew. While that's true to some extent, the salary raises I've received haven't matched the rising cost of living. Japan is known for its lifetime employment system, where people stay in one company for their entire careers. However, this system also means that salary increases tend to be small and slow. For foreigners, who often come from countries with more competitive wage growth, this can be frustrating. In my case, even after switching jobs to a higher-paying position, the overall pay raise was still lower than what I would have expected back in the US. What makes it more challenging is that the cost of living in cities like Tokyo continues to rise. Rent, groceries, and transportation costs have all gone up, but salaries have not risen at the same rate. If you're planning to move to Japan, it's important to consider not just your starting salary, but also how well your earnings will keep up with inflation over time. Living in Japan as a foreigner has definitely come with its challenges. From finding a job, to navigating a culture that values conformity, to dealing with salary stagnation, it's not always the smooth ride people imagine. But despite these challenges, Japan remains an incredibly rewarding place to live. The country's rich history, beautiful landscapes, and unique blend of modern and traditional culture are unmatched. If you're thinking about making the move, just be prepared. Understand that there will be difficulties, but they're challenges you can overcome. If I could give one piece of advice, it's this: be patient, stay open-minded, and don't be afraid to ask for help from other foreigners who've gone through the same experiences. Thanks for watching, and if you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. I'll be sharing more about my life in Japan and tips for foreigners living here, so stay tuned.